Ready to dive into some serious estate planning? We're going deep today, especially with this whole 2025 TCJA thing looming.
Oh, yeah.
We got to talk about SLATs.
Absolutely. A powerful tool.
Not window blinds, though, I guess.
Ah,
You might be feeling just as cool after we break this down. So, with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act on its way out in 2025,
right. 2025.
understanding these LLATs, or Spousal Lifetime Access Trusts,
Yeah, if you're listening, these could be a game changer.
big time. That Forbes article we saw, they weren't messing around.
No, they were not.
Basically saying, time to maximize that estate planning, folks, while you still can.
Exactly.
Those higher estate and gift tax exemptions, they're not going to be around forever.
It's about acting now. You know, every year you wait is a year. Those potential savings aren't growing.
Right, compounding.
That example they had gifting, say, $13.61 million.
Big number.
It is, but let it grow at, let's just say, 7% per year, 20 years down the line.
Right.
You're looking at over $52 million. That's over $21 million in potential estate tax savings.
Okay, I'm seeing dollar signs now. But for those of us who haven't spent our lives in estate law,
Of course.
what even is a SLAT? Break it down for us.
So at its core, a SLAT is an irrevocable trust. Think of it like, once you lock this chest, you can only open it under certain conditions.
So no takebacks. Once it's set up, it's set up.
Exactly. One spouse, we'll call them the settler spouse, puts assets into this trust.
Okay.
And those assets are for the benefit of their spouse, the beneficiary spouse.
So it's still within the family, but not
Right.
technically part of the settler's estate anymore.
Exactly. Shielded from certain estate taxes. And here's the kicker. A SLAT, if it's done right, can potentially help assets avoid estate tax for both spouses.
Both. Wow.
Meaning those assets would pass to your heirs, maybe children, grandchildren, potentially, with massive tax savings.
Okay, so we're talking generational wealth building here.
That's the idea.
Love it. But you said, if done right, what's the catch?
Good question. This is where it gets a little more, well, we need to talk about the generation skipping tax exemptions, GST exemptions.
Ah, rings a bell. Something about taxes on inheritances, like way down the line, right?
Exactly. Now imagine combining those GST exemptions with your SLAT. You could potentially help assets avoid taxes, not just for your kids, but your grandkids too. It's like
A dynasty?
exactly. Building a financial fortress, of course, there's always a but, right?
There's always a but.
States have different laws regarding dynasty trusts,
Ah, right.
which, by the way, could be another deep dive entirely.
Oh, we'll save that for later. So it's kind of like you're playing chess, not just to beat your opponent, but to outsmart.
I like that. I like it.
Outsmart the IRS.
Exactly. But just like in chess, you don't want to make any rash moves.
Right. You've got to be strategic.
One wrong step could trigger what the IRS calls the reciprocal trust doctrine. Let's say both spouses, try to be smart and set up individual SLATs for each other.
Double the SLATs, double the saving.
Not quite. The IRS might look at that and say, nope, these are basically the same trust. We're going to consider them both part of the couple's taxable estate.
Ah, so much for that. They really do think of everything.
Right. That's why you want someone good in your corner. A skilled estate planning attorney can make sure each SLAT is distinct enough to stand on its own.
Okay, so how do they do that?
Well, it's about the details. You vary the timing of when they're created, maybe different terms, different trustees.
They don't look like carbon copies.
Exactly. Each one needs to be its own unique entity with a clear, independent purpose.
Got it. Got it. Okay, so here's something I've been wondering. What happens if, divorce?
Oh, that's a big one. And yeah, it gets overlooked surprisingly often.
You didn't think that would be, like, top of mind for some people.
You'd think. But the good news is we can build provisions right into the SLAT to handle that.
So it's like a prenup for your trust?
Kind of. It makes sure things are split fairly, even if, life happens.
Always good to have a backup plan.
Always. And for some folks, we might even layer in a postnuptial agreement too, just for extra peace of mind. It's really about tailoring the strategy to each family,
Right, right. Okay, let's go back to something you said earlier, grantor trust.
Ah, yes.
Sounds kind of scary, honestly. What does that even mean for, the person setting this whole thing up?
It's not as complicated as it sounds. Basically, the settler spouse, the one who funds the SLAT, they're still on the hook for income tax on those assets.
Wait, really? So even though those assets aren't technically part of their estate anymore, they still pay taxes on them?
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, but it's all about the long game. By paying the income tax now, they're actually shrinking their taxable estate.
So less for the IRS to come after later.
Exactly. And that means more for their beneficiaries to inherit tax-free down the road.
Okay, I see the logic. But what about, like, right now? Wouldn't paying taxes on assets they can't even touch create cash flow issues?
Right, that's a good point. We don't want to leave the settler high and dry. We can actually build in like reimbursement provisions.
So the trust can pay them back.
Exactly. And in some cases, we might even allow for the settler to borrow from the trust, under certain conditions, of course, just to smooth things out.
Okay, so there's a lot of, like, fine-tuning you can do.
It's all about customization. There's no one-size-fits-all here.
Right, makes sense. So for anyone listening who's thinking, SLATs, that's my ticket to a stress-free legacy,
Haha, I was just thinking about that.
what's the one thing you want them to remember?
SLATs are great. Don't get me wrong, they're powerful. But you got to be smart. They're not a magic bullet, you know?
Not a DIY project.
Exactly. You need that expert guidance because we're not just talking about money here. We're talking about,
Legacies.
right, making sure your hard work benefits the people you care about for generations.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up, we got to touch on something else, state laws. Seems like every time we, uncover one layer of this.
It's like another world opens up, right?
Totally.
And the thing is, sometimes those state laws, they can actually give you even more flexibility than federal law.
Really, even better.
Sometimes, yeah. We could talk about directed trusts, where you can designate someone like a trusted advisor to manage certain parts.
Okay.
Or asset protection planning. That can be huge, depending on your situation.
So many layers to this. It's like,
Like those games with the secret level.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where having that expert, that attorney we keep mentioning,
They're your guide.
they make all the difference.
They can navigate all of it, federal, state, make sure you're not missing any opportunities.
Maximize those benefits.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, it's about creating a legacy and doing it the right way.
Couldn't agree more. Well, there you have it, folks. SLATs, estate planning, and securing your family's future. Remember, knowledge is power. Until next time, happy planning.